Start with the bass.
Here, V goes.
Who's starting with the bass line? V.
So it's always so far. Double will you go? So it's always so far. Double will you go? Game on again. So it's always so far. Double will you go? Game on again. So far. Double will you go? Oh, so it's always so far. Double will you go? So it's a base, but double will the young on the way.
Wildest imagining. I wanted to have a groovy show with groovy music, but I could have never thought this up. Thank you very much, Leif. That's great stuff.
Very groovy label.
Hey, who am I?
Chopped liver.
Yeah.
And Chop Liver, you were great too.
Listen, the rhythm man is something like the lineman in the football team. They hate the lead guitar, but you can't live without them.
Right, sure.
Now, hey kids, what time is it?
Time for Gezintahait Street.
It is time for Gezintahait Street, and the story for tonight is called Shamil's Song. Our Rebbe taught this song called Shamil's Song, and he explained that he heard the song from the older Hasidim, and the story came with it. The story happened when the Tsarist government was expanding its dominion over all the contiguous territory, and they wanted to conquer the Caucasus Mountains. The people who lived there were not lowlanders, but like birds who soared on high. So you can see it even in our days. The revolution of the Chechens was the same thing. There are these people from the Caucasus who revolted against the government. And even though the Russian army overwhelmingly outnumbered the mountain people, they couldn't conquer them. Why? Because of the mountainous terrain, like we know about all guerrilla wars. But the Russians deceived the mountain people with false promises of peace and captured their leader, whose name was Shamil. And they banished him into the depths of Russia. There in exile, he would remember his home in the high mountains, where he was free from his oppressor. He deeply yearned for his mountain home and its freedom to soar like an eagle in the heavens. And he would sing his song, which opened with yearning and ended on the theme of hope that he would one day return home. Should we have the nigga now?
Yeah, Bezalel, that in Chechnya, Shamil is actually a very popular name even till today.
Really?
Yeah, it's a name. I imagine it must go back to this Shamil.
I'm sure it does.
I mean, I knew him. He was a nice boy.
Should we
I was
hear?
there,
He used to come in the store. He never bought anything.
Well, okay, Bezalel, but he also never broke anything. That's pretty good.
So should we have the niggun? Should we have the song now?
Yeah, let's have this song.
In the middle of the story? Here's
We
the
can do it.
here's Shamil's song.
Ya mama moyna nam amamoy ya mama moyna nam ayanam hoy
That Shamil was singing from the heart.
He sure was. I told you, he was a nice boy.
When the Hasidim heard the song, they connected it to the soul's descent to this world. A descent from the highest heights, like Shamil up in the mountain, to the lowest depth, like Shamil in exile in Russia. The soul on high is unified with Hashem. It's hewn from under the throne of glory from God's throne. It stands before the living God. But when it descends to this world and a person contemplates his dark state, how from this high level of divinity, the soul comes into a state where it's completely dark and there's no revelation of God at all. How he's bound to the body and the animal soul. Each person knows how he has caused a blemish in his soul through sins. And even if he has fixed the damage, still his mitzvahs are not perfect. And even to every good action and desire, there are hurdles and obstacles. And even when he's aroused to love and fear Hashem and serve him happily. There's obstacles to that service. Nevertheless, even a great righteous person who serves Hashem with love of delight remains an entity separate from divinity. There's this guy who loves, and then there's Hashem that he loves. And even though all this is in order to achieve an ascent, the reason we come down here and get darkened up in the body and an animal soul, so that we'll reach a higher level than where we started, standing in front of Hashem. To achieve an ascent higher than is standing before the descent. Nevertheless, at the point when he's down here, he's still at a low point. He's not able to spread his wings and soar like an eagle because he's constrained in exile in the body. At the time a person contemplates all this, he's aroused and he yearns. My soul thirsts. My flesh yearns for you, yearns for the high mountains, for the source of the soul. Our forefathers, who were called mountains, from whom all their descendants inherited the level of high mountains. That's the high mountains where Shemiel came from. And that's what the Hasidim learned about themselves, that they come from the high mountains, which is our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which symbolize the godly levels of kindness and justice and beauty of the world of Atzilus, and even higher than Atzilus, all the way to the heights of the infinite, before the original contraction. And the last stanza of the song expresses hope and surety that finally no one is lost. We will ascend from this deep, dark valley and reach the place of our desire, even higher than the heights from which we descended. Because after all, the reason for the descent is to reach and be unified with Hashem himself, to embrace and cleave to the King, the Holy One, blessed be he. And after singing the song, the Rebbe sang the song and he taught it to us. Our Rebbe actually sang this song and he taught it to us. He said that even in the first stanza, which expressed the great longing to return to freedom of the high mountains, could be sensed the great strength of his former soaring freedom. He was essentially a free person, even when confined, his free essence was felt, like the metaphor of a king's son in prison, who nevertheless always realizes he's a prince. Similarly, the descent of the soul, which even when confined in this low, dark world, feels its essential, unlimited state. And that realization gives one the strength to overcome all obstacles, serving the King, his Father, and through that, he achieves the highest level. He unites with Hashem himself. Can we have another chorus of that Shemiel song?
Ya mama moyna na mama moy mama moy ya mama moyna na ayana yo la Rama, ya la Rama, oh ya la Rama, oh te yamam, oh ya
And with that story, and with that song, our Rebbe reveals to us the point of existence.
Especially that last note played really revealed the point of existence right there. Bow.
Lev got it.
Yep.
Now,
You know what those bongos, you know what they are? I realized they're Ratzu Vashuv.
oh,
They're going up, right? You have the one bongo is they're going up to Hashem, and the other one is the Hashem coming down to the people. You think those are stam bongos? Stam bongos wouldn't sound like that. Well, maybe Hoshi has something to do with that too, but he's got to have the right tools too.
yeah. Is that something like bingo? Bongo?
Yeah, bingos, bongos.
So, we've been explaining Gimel Elam. As you know, the levels of Chachma, Bina, and Das, and the emotion attributes of the intellect, which explains if that thing, if the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge is benign or dangerous. Which way does it lean? Does it lean towards kindness?
Now
That-
we're still talking in the brain, right? He's not afraid yet. He's just thinking about if he should be afraid.
Correct.
Okay.
So we explained all those levels of the intellect, of Chabad, Chachma, Bina, Sadas, and Yisro, Saba, and Tabuna, which are the emotional leanings of the intellect, and how that works in the service of the heart. Because we said that Tabuna has in it, the word Tabuna in Hebrew has in it a ben and a bas, a son and a daughter. And the son is the love of God, and the daughter is the fear of God. So that word Tabuna contains those two dynamics. So once we have an actual feeling in the heart, which came from the intellect, that includes the whole person, the intellect and the heart, until you finally get to thought, speech, and action. And the final action is the first thing in thought. The final thing that you accomplish is what you thought of first. And after that thought, then it goes through these levels of the intellect and the emotions to be able to accomplish the action.
You mean something like if I want an ice cream, for example, and then I say, well, to get the ice cream, I have to find an ice cream store. Now
No,
I'm
you
gonna
need to
get
find the money.
like the money in the ice cream store, but really that all those plans and all those steps, the first thing that I
Only
thought
to
about
get
was the last thing I got was the ice cream.
And to understand how this contemplation, which is the detailed contemplation of the chain of descent to the worlds of the Seder Estalkus, brings one to accomplish the above, that his intellect and his emotions and his thoughts, speech, and action are completely unified and tied with Hashem through understanding the chain of descent to the world. And therefore, there is a commandment to know Hashem, like we spoke about. And to know Hashem is in terms of hearing, which is Shema. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And the level of hearing, listen, is the level of Bina, which means Hisbonanos, and Ian, which means to understand. And how is that accomplished? By going over the details of the explanation until it's understood clearly. So that's what we're going to talk about now. How, in other words, up till now, we acquired the tools to achieve what we need to achieve. And now we're going to find out, particularly through the Hisbonanos, through understanding how the worlds are created from nothing. Now, in general, there's two levels of worlds. There's the hidden worlds, You listening, Gimel Aleph?
Yeah, I'm looking. Let me put people on the place here. 2 levels of worlds right here. Okay, good.
We're on page 1 at the
Yeah.
bottom.
I got it.
There's 2 levels of worlds. There's the hidden worlds, which are not revealed, which is the world of Atzilus and higher. And that's called the higher unity because it is unified with the emanator of the world. 2, there's the revealed or created worlds, where the creations feel separate from God. And these created worlds have the energy which flows in them to create them and enliven them. There's 2 things in the creation of something from nothing. These worlds are a nothing. They feel themselves to exist separate from God. But really the energy that keeps them alive and brings them into being, those are the 2 things, enlivening and bringing into being. Even though they feel separate from God, it is only Hashem himself that flows in them to keep them alive and keep them in being. And the source of these creations is called Malchus of Atzilus. There is a world of Atzilus, and the world of Atzilus is called the world of unity. And to give you a rough metaphor for how that might work, my hand is part of me. My hand does not feel separate from me. So too in the world of Atzilus, the godly manifestation, the right arm is the godly manifestation of kindness. And the left arm is the godly manifestation of strict measurement. So there's a whole man there. But there in that world, that man is all included in the godly unity. But how that world creates separate worlds that feel themselves separate is through the lowest level of that world, which is called Malchus of Atzilus, which is the godly thought and the godly speech, the decree of the king that creates the world. Let there be light. The one that is speaking, let there be light, is Malchus of Atzilus. And what is this light that it's creating? It's a manifestation of the godly kindness. So the source of all the creations that feel separate from Hashem is the decree of the king, which is called Malchus of Atzilus. Like it says, your kingship is a kingship over all worlds. He's the king that creates everything. He creates and enlivens through his decree. And when we call him you, we're talking to Hashem when we say you enliven them all. That you is the level of Malchus, the one who enlivens the worlds. But the essence of the infinite light is higher and removed. Both of these kind of worlds. It's higher than the hidden worlds, and it's higher than the revealed world. It's the essence of the infinite light. And the chronology of this contemplation that we do is to start by contemplating the created, revealed worlds that feel separate from Hashem, and how they are created and enlivened by the word of Hashem, the decree of the king, Malchus of Atzilus. That's what we start in our contemplation, to see how the created worlds are created through Malchus, which is the decree of the king. And we start by contemplating the letters of divine speech, which combine into the words of divine utterances. Like it says, let there be light. And the one who decrees let there be light is in particular in the Seder of Salshalus, Malchus of Atzilus. So Hashem manifests as the king who decrees the creation from nothing. And if the letters of those divine utterances, in other words, if Hashem would stop saying, let there be light, then the creations would return to nothing. There would no be such thing as life as they were before they were created. In other words, if Hashem would stop saying those words of creation, even for an instant, those creations would cease to exist.
So Bitzalel, so what you're saying is then when it says in the beginning of the Torah, and it says, and Hashem said, let there be light, and he said, let the water separate from the land. So it's not just something he said, he's still saying them, or it would stop happening.
Right.
Oh, wow. So Hashem is that the whole creation is happening every single second.
Right. And that's the godly light that comes into the world to enliven and bring it into being. And on this, it tells us, lift up your eyes and see who created these creations. The creations being the stars and the planets, all the creatures and all the angels. Lift up your eyes and see who created them. That is this contemplation. How is it that they exist? To see and understand that the main component of all existence is the Creator, who continually brings them into existence. He creates these, and they are significant, and without him, they are insignificant, and without him, they are non-existent. And this contemplation is the understanding of how Malchus of Atzilus is unified with the created worlds. That's called the lower unity. And it's our starting point where we start from. And it's not that hard. It's not an act of faith to realize, number one, that there is an intelligence behind the creation. Because to say there was a random explosion and a perfect system came out is completely against the science of statistics. And even science agrees that for every effect, there's a cause. And the Rambam says it's nonsense to think that there's an unlimited number of causes that cause an unlimited number of effects. There has to finally be
to start somewhere.
There has to be a first cause. And the first cause has to be nothing. Because if it's a something, it has a cause.
It's like I told my wife. I said it wasn't my fault. And she said, but there's nobody else here, Gimel. And I said, you're right.
And that's our starting point. It says, this is the gate to Havaya. This is the gate to get to Hashem. And through it, it leads to a higher contemplation into the hidden world, which is the upper unity, the world of Atzilus.
So just so we recap and I understand. So there's an upper unity and a lower unity. So the lower he's bringing us, we're doing on the lower unity, which this is understanding how Hashem is how is Malchus, his kingship in Atzilus unifies with everything in the world and brings them into being every second, and how he encloses himself down here in this life, in this world.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's just the general idea. And in particular, the waste matter from the wheel angels, which are very low angels, is what gives the energy for all the stars and planets to spin around. And those wheel angels, each one of them has a mazel, which tells it to give the energy for the stars to spin around. And the general mazels are the 12 constellations. And so too, even those 12 constellations have a mazel that tells them to go around. And it's a whole big bureaucracy until finally is realized how everything is included in Malchus of Atzilus and comes into being from the godly decree. And this understanding is called the bina of the contemplation of how Hashem creates the world. And in that bina, in that understanding, guess what there is? a length, a width, and a depth.
And a depth, a length, a width, and a depth.
We learned
What do you know?
Remember, we learned in chapter 1 that every chachma has a depth, width, and length, and every bina has a depth, width, and length. And the bina and the understanding of how Hashem creates the world from nothing also has a depth, a width, and a length. Is that elegant?
Yeah, it's like Bill Cosby said, I told you that story so I can tell you this one.
Right. Now, the length of that understanding of how Hashem brings the world into being from nothing is called Bina of Bina, like we said in chapter 1. In understanding and teaching of a teacher, we start with the metaphors that the Rebbe brings down. And we stay on it until we reach the point of the explanation, which is the depth of the Bina. And that's what we're going to accomplish by using our mind to accomplish how to understand how Hashem brings the worlds into being. We're going to start with the metaphors, and we're going to climb up that ladder until we get to the point of where they are all included in Malchus of B'Tzilas. Similarly, is the Ian in the particular creations that are created from the godly nothing, and how they are nullified in their general source, which is Malchus of B'Tzilas, which is the divine thought. And the contemplation starts by understanding how each creature and each world is nullified to its particular source. For example, the emotion attributes of the world of Asiya, for example, are nullified in Chachma and Bina of the world of Asiya. Like we know that the emotion attributes come from the Chachma and Bina, the wisdom, understanding in the brain. That's why Chachma is called the father and Bina is called the mother, and they born out the emotion attributes. So the emotion attributes in the world of Asiya, in other words, in the world of Asiya, there's good angels and there's angels that accuse. And they will be the emotional attributes in those worlds, and they are all included in the Chachma and Bina of that world, according to Hashem's seichel of what he wants. That's how those become manifest, and how in turn Chachma and Bina of Asiya, but Chachma and Bina of Asiya themselves are nullified to Keser of Asiya. Keser of Asiya is Hashem's desire for the world of Asiya, and how that bureaucracy, the world of Asiya, will come out from the crown of that world, which is Hashem's desire and pleasure in having that world.
So basically, in each world, on the top there's like desire, the
Right.
Keser,
Called
and
the
then
crown.
this leads to there being a thought, and then out of the thought comes an emotion, and this is going to lead to action eventually.
I think you.
Must be
I
desire.
I think well, yeah, that's what he said. The crown is a desire, but from the desire comes the Chachma and Bina, and that Chachma and Bina produces an emotion, and that emotion then produces a thought. How do I know I love something? Because I think I do. Now, it's true that every level has to have a thought. There has to be a thought of Chachma and a thought of Bina. But how the emotion attributes are manifest is they send a message to the mind to have a thought. I like this or I don't like it. So the desire for the world of Asiya is nullified in Malchus of the higher world. In the godly decree for the lower world, there is the godly desire for how that lower world should go. When a king tells a general to capture a city, by the king it's his speech, Malchus. By the general it becomes his desire to accomplish. So from Malchus of the higher world, from the godly decree, comes the desire of the lower world.
But this goes in each world, right? So it's
Every
like
world,
it's like
all the
it's
way
like
up.
the king tells the general, and now the general has desire. Ultimately, he decides what to do based on that desire, and then he tells the colonel, And then what he
Exactly.
tells the Koinel, which is an
Major
extension of what the
larger.
king wants.
What would the Kesser?
But really, all of that.
What would the Kesser Yisro be then? The military.
The Kesser of Yisro?
That what would that be?
Well,
Oh, that would be Johnny.
No, like the king says, I want to have battalions that are armed with this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff before he goes on a campaign. Something like that.
But really, even what the Koinel then tells the major and so on and so forth, really, it's all the will of the king.
Right.
All
correct.
carrying out the will of the
All
king.
the way back.
Okay.
That's what we said. It's all included in models of Attila. Finally, through this process to understand, it all telescopes back to the general source, like you just said, of all creation, which is models of Attila, like it says, your kingship is a kingship of all worlds. Your kingship, the word your kingship, is Malchus of Attila. That is the depth of this exponent. That's the depth of this understanding, of this detailed understanding of the creation of the world from nothing. I don't want to get too lost in the rarefied atmosphere. Maybe we can have
Maybe we have a little
That's
Negan something
that's
going.
the desire to have the decree.
well, no, that's the desire to have the world of Attila. But you're right. The first thought is the final, what you want finally to come out. You're right. And that only is just a particular desire. We're not up to the essential desire of Hashem and himself, which the essential desire of Hashem and himself, it's like a football owner. He has this great desire in building a beautiful stadium. But really what he wants is the Super Bowl. So too, when Hashem does this whole thing we're talking about, the real essential inner desire of Hashem is that we do a mitzvah down here in this world that he makes.
In other words, he's building a stadium because he wants his team, the Jewish people, to win a Super Bowl in that stadium.
Yeah, or for example, he wants a concert from the Beatles in the stadium, which we're going to have right now.
Which one do you like? This year. Which one is that?
I don't remember that one. You have to tell me which one. I can't remember which nigga that is.
It's the level that's not known. and Malchus of Atzilus dancing on that one. Now, we learned before in chapter 1 and 2 that Iyun, which means to stay on the explanation until it's understood clearly, brings one to the mental bond with the depth of the explanation, with the point of the explanation, which is called the depth of Das. You bond to the point of the explanation with the mind, and that bond with the mind to the point of explanation, that's called Das. And the depth of the explanation and bonding to that depth, in our case, is the original godly nothing through which the worlds exist, Malchus of Atzilus. The depth of this understanding that we just went through is Malchus of Atzilus. And when we reach that, then we put our concentration, our mind on that fact, and through that bond, we'll come to realization and intellectual vision of the Chachma, which enlivens that Bina. So in contemplating the creation, after the realization that the whole creation is nullified to its general source, which is Malchus of Atzilus, and by concentrating, by putting our das on that idea, we will finally achieve a level of seeing intellectually, like I see, not I hear. The first thing is I hear, now I see. That is the upper unity of the hidden world of Atzilus. And how the 10 spheros in turn are unified with each other and ultimately included and nullified with the emanator. Baruch Hu, blessed be He. And that's the chachma of this contemplation, how the hidden worlds are unified with the emanator. And we start by understanding the details of those 10 spheros and their nullification to the higher spheros until is realized the inclusion of all in the emanator. And that's called the depth of chachma of this meditation. And to give you just a small idea of how those spheros of Atzilus are unified one with the other, our meditation before this took us up to the level of Malchus of Atzilus, and Malchus of Atzilus is a full partzuf. Partzuf means a face, means a full anthropomorphic, symbolic person. Doesn't mean that God is a person. It means that there's an intellect and emotions and thought, speech, and action on that level.
He's not a person, but he's a real mensch.
A real mensch. And how are those intellect and emotions of Malchus manifest? Because it's a famous thing. Malchus has nothing for itself. Malchus is like the moon that only shines the light of the sun. So how is it that Malchus becomes a full person? And the answer is that every one of the spheros have 10 spheros in it. And each one of them have a Malchus, like Chachma has a Malchus of Chachma, which is the letters through which it's revealed. And Bina has a Malchus of Bina. And Chesed has a Malchus of Chesed. So from Malchus of Chachma comes out Chachma of Malchus. And from Malchus of Bina comes out Bina of Malchus. So there's a way to understand how it is that the spirits of Atzilus are unified with each other, and they all come out from the emanator, because that is his rason, that there should be a world of Atzilus. If you guys have another
Mitzalel, does Bina of Chesed, of Gevura, of Chachma, of Chesed also have a Malchus?
Of course.
I was always wondering about that, Leib.
It does.
First of all, I just wanted to say, I wanted to tell you that I love Hashem, yes, I truly do. I love the Torah and the mitzvahs too. I love Hashem, yes, I truly do. And Hashem loves me too. That was just the introduction, Vladimir. What do you say? The Helic.
Give us a few bars.
The trilogy.
You want to do that?
Yeah. You have another idea. What do you want to do?
Is that the boogie?
Oh yeah.
It's the
It's the he rotzing with
no, let's do something else.
What do you want?
I'm gonna surprise you.
Oh wow, it's been a while. That's a good pick, late. We haven't done that. Ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, did I ay 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 yam, ay ay did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, did I ay ay yam, ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam. Ay 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 did I yam, did I yam, ay 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 yam, ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, ay 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 did I yam, did I ay ay yam, hey ay da did I la lam, ay 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 yam, ay ay yam, hey oh did I la lam, oh ay ay yam, hey ay da did I la lam, ay 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 yam, ay ay yam, hey ay did I ay yam, oh ay ay yam. Aha, hoy, ay, 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 yam, ay, 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 did I yam, ay, 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 did I yam, ay, 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 did I yam, ay, ay, oy, hey, oy, did I lam, ahoy, hey, 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 ay, 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 did I yam, mama, did I yam, ay, 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 did I yam, ay, ay, oy, hey, oy, hey, did I lam. Hey ya da da la la, ya 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 ya. Hey ya da la la, oh ya yo. Hey ya da da la la, hey ya 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 ya, ya ya da ya. Hey yo ya ya, hey ya ya da ya, ya ya da ya. Hey ya da ya, ma da ya 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 ya, ya ya da ya, ya ya da ya. Ay 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 did I yam, hey did I ho hey, ay ay did I yam, ay ay did I yam, ay ay did I yam, hey did I lam bam 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 bam, ay ay did I yam, ay ay did I yam, ay ay did I yam, ma did I ho, oh you now did I la la, ay ay yam, hey ya did I yam, oh ay yo, hey yo now. La la, ay 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 yam, ay yam, hey ya did a mam bam, hey ya yam, ahoy hoy, hey ya ya yam, ay ay did a yam, ay ay did a yam, ay ay did a lam, ay ay oy, hey yo, oh did a lam, ahoy. Hey, na ya ya, ma ya ya, did I yam? Ay ay ay, did I yam? Ay ay ay, did I yam? Ay ay ay, hey oh, na did I lam? Hey oh, did I lam? Ay 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 yam, ay ay yam. Hey ya, did I yam? Ay ay oh, hey ya, na did I lam? Ay 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 yam, ay ay yam. Hey ya, did I yam? Hoy,
Brilliant.
that was a good pick, Lee. We didn't do that one for a while. Oh, that's a good nickname.
Brilliant.
That was a good pick, I think. What do you think, Haishi? I thought that was good.
We're going to do the sign-off again now. Is that all right? Whatever.
Yeah, we should do this sign. Oh, wait, Bezalel. I have a short appeal.
Oh,
I just want to say that this week in Pashas Yisro, Hashem gives the Torah. And you know, Hashem gave, the Torah is a gift. And the reason it's a gift, as we know, that it says before the Torah was given, Avram Avinu kept the Torah. All of the Torah. But the question, how he could keep it. Was there a Levi that he could give a tithe to? Was there a Beis HaMikdash he can bring his korban in?
there was a Cohen.
There was a Kohen, that there was. But there wasn't a Levi. He could not remember Miriam. That's one of the mitzvahs, because Miriam was not even born yet. right? So Avram did these things in a spiritual way, but he had to do it through his own labor. But the problem is we're not Avram Avinu. We can't do this kind of thing by ourselves. And this is why the Torah is such a big gift. That to doing just physical actions, Hashem gives us the ability to unify his name in the heavens and the earth the same way like Avram
No,
Avinu
not
did.
the same way. More.
More than Avram Avinu did. Even
Because
more.
by him, when whatever tefillin he did, it didn't stay. The
It didn't
holiness
stick.
didn't stay.
It didn't, you know why? There was no piece of cake for it to stick in.
Right.
You know, and now
No cupcakes.
Yeah, now we not only we go up like he did, but we can bring it down, and everything that becomes holy, that we make holy with our mitzvah stays holy. This is a big gift.
Place for Hashem.
Well, you know what they say? What do they say? There's something about a gift horse in his mouth. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what it means. But my point is that the Eibishter is giving such a gift. If we have even a little bit of seichel, let's take the gift. So this Shabbos now we have the giving of the Torah. We should renew our commitment to keeping one more mitzvah and one more mitzvah. This beautiful gift that Hashem gave us, that we can bring him down, his essence down to this point. That's all I got to say, Vitaly.
I have a short story.
Good.
Very short. And it leaves us with something to think about. It doesn't give us an answer, but that's also good. When the Rebbe Rashab was 5 years old, he went into his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek asked him, "What are you learning in school?" So he told him, "This week is Parshas Yisro." He said, "It's Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah." The Tzemach Tzedek said, "Matan Torah is on Shavuos." So the boy said, "What's the difference?" So the Tzemach Tzedek said, "I don't know." So the boy said, "You're the Zayda, you have to know." So the boy's father, the Rebbe Marash, was there in the room, and he indicated to his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, that yeah, he really has to know. So he told the boy, Parshas Yisro, the king is in the field. On Shavuos, the king is in the palace. How to understand that music, I don't know, but it's an amazing story.
That's something that chew on, Bezalel.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Wait for that squeak. Oh yeah. Label like Snyder McSnyder says, ah yeah.